pleasure to welcome you here this evening with these lovely and talented young ladies. Women in leadership is encouraging and optimistic, especially for our young girls. However, this is not new, not at all. There are many matriarchal First Nations. Women have been leaders for thousands of years. I will also say, who better to be stewards of this land? Because we have been doing it very well for thousands of years. And I truly believe that. We've been taking care of the water, the earth, the trees for thousands of years. We knew when to use them, and we never overused them. That's why we still have fish and trees. We didn't do that. Okay. I'll say a short prayer for you. Creator, bless this gathering. Help them to open their minds, hearts, and spirits. May they receive comfort and inspiration. Bless your families at home. Bless the people with chronic pain. And bless the children. Thank you for this day, and thank you for our blessings. And I'll say another short one for you. Humankind has not woven the web of life. We are but just one thread within it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. All things are bound together, all things connect. Chief Seattle, 1854.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming to our Indigenous Stewardship Speaker Night. This is a part of the IMPAC5 Ocean Festival. My name is Carlo Acuña. I go by he, him, and I am the Ocean Conservation Campaigner for CPAWS-BC, the Canadian Park and Wilderness Association BC chapter. But first, I'd like to acknowledge that this place is the unceded and ancestral territory of the Hunkaminam and Squamish speaking peoples, the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh nations. Vancouver is located on territory that was never ceded, that was stolen by the Crown from the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. The term unceded acknowledges their forced removal from the land and the inherent rights of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh that hold it to the territory. The term serves as a reminder that Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh have never left their territories and will always retain their jurisdiction and relationships with the territory. These lands have been stewarded by the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh since time immemorial. Indigenous knowledge is born from these thousands of years of experience and stewardship. We have much to learn from them. Last month, at the UN Biodiversity Conference in Montreal, much of the world agreed to protect 30% of the planet by 2030. One of the best ways Canada can do this is to support Indigenous-led conservation. And in the next few weeks, thousands of people from all over the world will come to Vancouver for IMPAC5, the 5th International Marine Protected Area Congress. This is where we can start putting last month's goals into action. While delegates discuss how to protect the ocean for a healthy future at the Vancouver Convention Center, we are raising awareness about and sharing excitement of ocean conservation with the public with the events at this IMPAC5 Ocean Festival over the next few weeks. So this is the second part of the CPAWS-BC Ocean Fest Speaker Series. Last week, we were talking about ocean science at the BCIT downtown campus. And tonight, I am thrilled to welcome 3 speakers to share their knowledge and experience with Indigenous-led conservation. So I'd just like to introduce our first speaker tonight. Her name is Christine Smith-Martin. She is the CEO of the Great Bear Initiative, Coastal First Nations. She is a member of the Haida Nation and Lox Kw'alaams community. She is passionate about creating opportunities for young people that instills in them the value of traditional knowledge when planning for future economic developments. She was taught by elders that if we take care of our lands and waters, they will take care of us. She will be talking about Indigenous-led conservation and Coastal First Nations, which is leading the way to create a network of marine protected areas. Indigenous-led conservation is crucial for restoring the balance in nature for the benefit of future generations, reestablishing the connection between people and place, and creating a sustainable conservation-based economy.
Thank you so much. I always forget to talk into the mic, as my dad used to tell me all the time. Good evening, everybody. My name is Christine Smith-Martin. My traditional name is Hatyela. I come from the Yahwanis clan of Haida Gwaii. My grandmother was Lavina White of Haida Gwaii, and my father comes from a community called Laxwo-Alams, which is quite close to Prince Rupert and not too far from Haida Gwaii. And I first want to acknowledge the beautiful territory that we're on and the elder that shared those beautiful words earlier, and acknowledge this beautiful unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh. And most of us live and work on their beautiful territory, and anytime I have a chance to say hawa for allowing us to be on their territory. They're such great hosts. Every time that we have an event or we want a traditional welcoming, not just to have them there, but they always welcome us with open arms, and they're such great hosts. So thank you to them for allowing us to do this incredible work. I think I first want to, we're going to head to a video because I think sometimes it's easier to see the communities themselves and the work that's happening. My job as a CEO of Coastal First Nations is to really work with the communities, facilitate conversations, agreements. The real work happens in the communities. So we'll go into a video. It'll be a short 5-minute video. And I also want to acknowledge this beautiful building because probably, I think it was in 1999, I moved down to Vancouver, and I always laugh because I came here with a dream of getting educated and eventually going back home. I haven't made it quite back home yet. I've been down here for about 25 years. My daughter's 25 years old. But I got married and came down here and had the baby and went through these doors, and this is an incredible space that breeds lots of amazing leaders, lawyers, all kinds of walks of life that come through here, so I really want to acknowledge them. So if we can perhaps get to the YouTube video, and then we'll go into some more information after that. I think it was about 6 months ago, Kidisu, Pehe, and Newhawk actually signed a pilot project that designated their guardian watchmen in their communities as park rangers. They have the authority now not just to observe and track, but also to allow them to cite tickets and really enforce those pieces, which was really important to those communities. They really wanted to make sure that when they see poachers out there that they can go over and say, hey, come over here, you're getting a ticket, give me all your information. Before we had to observe, we didn't have that designation, so I just wanted to give a quick update. Protecting our lands and our territories in many of our communities isn't something that's new. It didn't just happen when we started embarking on this work. It happens for tens of thousands of years. And we know that because within our songs and our stories and a lot of our chieftainships, you'll hear the stories and you'll hear the responsibilities when some of our hereditary leaders take on very traditional names. You'll hear about the responsibility that that person has, the territory that they are responsible for, and it is their job to ensure that it's being protected. So I just wanted to add that component in it because it's really important. So when we see people attached to our territories, there is also a cultural component to that. We have that responsibility that's been passed down from chieftainship to chieftainship, so that when you take that chieftainship, you understand that it is your responsibility. And it's not just on that person, it's the tribe's responsibility, it's the people's responsibility. So they're very, very connected. And when we talk about these pieces, they're based on values and they're based on our traditional knowledge. The most successful models of protections are the ones that are led by our communities. We have vast knowledge of our communities. We're out there every single day monitoring, identifying areas that might be of concern, bringing it back, having conversations, alerting other authorities if need be. But when we think about these really successful models, that's why it is successful, and that's why it's important to have these models based and led by Indigenous communities. And you have the traditional knowledge, but along with the scientific knowledge, which I think is really important. Sometimes, before we used to have a lot of emphasis on the scientific knowledge, but a lot of the science aren't up in our communities. They aren't seeing our waters and our lands and our rivers. They aren't walking the creeks like our guardians do. These people are the knowledgeable people. The elders come out on land use plans and marine plans to contribute to those plans, to make sure that their voices are put into those plans. So it's a very elaborate process in most of our communities when they talk about Indigenous-led conservation. And I think Indigenous-led conservation has been recognized as the single most important pathway for Canada and the world to achieve existing and emerging biodiversity targets and sustainable, durable conservation and climate gains. And we've seen that, we just came back from Montreal, where we had a big announcement in terms of an Indigenous-led conservation. 4 of our nations across Canada came together with a proposal to the government and said, we are the ones that know our territory. If you want to reach that target, we are the ones that can reach that target. You can't reach it without Indigenous people. You can't reach it without Indigenous communities. And we will help you do that. But you are a partner at our table. And these are our territories. And it's really important. We are inviting you to sit at our table. We're inviting the province to sit at our table. We're inviting philanthropic communities to come do this work, because it'll take all of us. But be very clear, we are inviting you to our table. And so it was really, that message from our communities was really important, because I think for too long, government has led those conversations, and here we are. So it was in Montreal. I think I'm still recovering from all of that sort of meetings to get to that place, but I think they got it. I think they were able to understand that sitting at the table here, you're able to reach those targets, and it was done in a respectful way. We were both, talking about what that would look like. What would that future look like? And I think when we talk about climate crisis, everybody's ears are open now, because they're experiencing the floods, the fires, everything that comes along with it. Even in our home communities, we're experiencing the tremendous snow that were places where haven't had snow before. A key feature of an Indigenous-led conservation initiative is the integration of an ecosystem healthy and a community health well-being. Ecosystems that are sustainable and self-determining. Large scales investment is a transformative model that can deliver a nature and climate target while also advancing commitments, regional job creations and economic development goals and social justice improvements. And we've seen that in the Great Bear Rainforest Agreement that we had 13 years ago. Our communities had come together and said, we can't sustain this, it's gotta stop. And they developed their Great Bear Rainforest Agreement, and they developed a financial model that is still continuing to pay dividends to our communities, creating over 1,200 jobs, new businesses in our communities. So we're talking about these new financial models and these new initiatives. It's our communities that are coming together. And what we said to government, I don't know how many other funding that you hand out that 13 years later is still paying dividends, but that's what we're doing. And we did it based on our community's expertise. 5 minutes. Oh, I just got through introductions. Okay. I was telling him I get very passionate about this and sometimes forget. But I think I'll just close by talking about why is it important to have Indigenous-led conservation, and why is it more successful in terms of our view anyway. And I think it's those pieces that I just talked about, the knowledge that we have and the innovators that we have in our community. I'm very proud we have over 11 communities that blanket the whole North Coast, coming from Haida Gwaii to xʷməthkվəy to Kitkatla to Hartley Bay, and then the Central Coast, Bella Bella, Newhall, Kitasoo, Wekano. We have a lot of amazing communities, and they're the ones that come together. My job is a bit easier, but they come together and they say, this is what we want to do, and this is how we want to do it, and this is the table that we want to set. And I think it's a good time now because like I said, everybody's ears open, but the expectation on Indigenous communities is that we're going to fix this problem that we did not create. But we're not going to walk away from it because it's our territories. We are going to dig in and try to help where we can to make a huge difference. So I do again want to thank CPAWS, for allowing us to come here and sharing a little bit of our story, and thank you for creating these events because it's really important. It's nice to get my head out of my books and come and meet wonderful people. So thank you very much.
So our last speaker is Wylee Fitz-Gerald. She is a Métis master's student at the University of British Columbia. She is studying the impact of atmospheric particles on ocean microorganisms, and her research has brought her to the Atlantic, Pacific, and Arctic oceans. And she'll be talking about the relevance of indigenizing research at universities. In responding to the Truth and Reconciliation's calls to action, universities are in the process of figuring out what it means to indigenize. Currently, these efforts are focused on undergraduate courses. While this is an essential step towards equity, it does not address how this will be integrated in the research environment. Wylee is with the Earth Science Experiential and Indigenous Learning Team at UBC, and this helps to bridge the gap by developing workshops for science labs focused on creating space for indigenous knowledge, practices, and sovereignty in the research environment. So Wylee, come on up.
Hi everyone. So I'm an oceanographer at UBC. I'm just finishing up my master's, hopefully in March. And I won't be talking about my research today. I'm going to be talking about these justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion workshops that I've developed for science research labs. I am Métis on my dad's side, so I've included a photo of him. This is my dad. He's my main support for being involved in the Métis community and for getting involved in indigeneity and sciences and promoting conversations about Jedi diversity topics. So he's also made my earrings that I'm wearing today. Yeah. I want to acknowledge the Musqueam Nation because the work that I've done has been informed by the elders that met at the UBC First Nations House of Learning. And they've been very generous to welcome me onto their land and to support me in the work that I've done, and also to help me figure out and identify more with my own Métis identity. So I just wanted to thank them for that and for the work that they've done involved in this project. So I'm going to be talking about this workshop that I've developed. Its intention was to provide some structured content for researchers to create space to have discussions that incorporate Indigenous Jedi topics into their research. One of the goals was to educate researchers on why reconciliation is relevant to their research, to get them to explore some of the responsibility that they have to reconciliation, and to question if the approach they are taking is both wanted and respectful. And wanted is a very important aspect that isn't always incorporated in university environments, because so often there's some kind of funding mechanism that the research needs to be done under, and it is presented to a community instead of going to the community and asking what is needed and having that community-led aspect. So I'm talking a little bit more today about the research aspect and how the research informs environmental stewardship and practices and policies, and the fact that the biases associated with research and how the research is conducted really can change how the stewardship happens or those policies are created. So the origin of this all started with my own experience working in a science research lab. In 2022, the BC government mandated that university researchers had to address the calls to action in the Truth and Reconciliation report and report on it annually. This created a lot of pressure for professors at universities that has brought this to the forefront of conversation in research labs. So there became this kind of hyped conversation around how do we indigenize, how do we decolonize, how do we start incorporating Indigenous communities into our research? And there's a lot of questions around how, but not a lot of starting with that why. Why are we being pressured to do this? Why are we suddenly needing to incorporate this? Why should I care? Starting with that individual learning before starting to apply it to the research. So I came up with a workshop from my own research lab of this necessity to improve my own research environment, because I got a lot of questions, but there was a lot of terminology being thrown around, and I just felt like some more education in a fundamental way could help improve the research environment and help inform researchers on how to do this in a respectful and reciprocal way. So I'm going to walk through some of the topics I go through in my workshop, just as an overview to look at some of the things that I find are most important, things that I personally wanted to educate other researchers on, and what I think will be important to drive research in the future to be more community-led and respectful of communities. So the first one I'd like to talk about is positionality. I think Emily did a great job at speaking to her own positionality. Positionality is something that isn't often talked about in science communities. It is becoming more broadly talked about, but there's this hesitancy because science is always talked about as objective. Science is objective, but positionality says that science can't be objective because we all hold social identities. And these social identities, they can taint how we do our research. And one way to describe this is I am an English speaker. I speak English. I don't speak or read another language currently. I'm working on it. But this means whenever I go to do a literature review, I automatically exclude any other publication that is not English. So right off the bat, I am excluding a whole bunch of knowledge from other communities and cultures. And because of this, in research, you often get very biased publications. And you don't actually have to present this. When you go to publish, you don't have to state your own positionality or any of the social identities you hold. So you get very biased publications, but you don't understand the context in which you're provided it. So being able to explore your own positionality, and being able to state your positionality, helps others understand the context in which you provide them the information. I often talk to researchers about this because it's important even for non-Indigenous researchers. If they state their positionality, it can tell people that if they're informing or talking about something that has an Indigenous component, that people can look at it from a certain lens. And it can be often paired with suggesting that you look at it from a different context. Look for the same kind of topic presented by an Indigenous individual. So positionality is a very important thing that I think needs to be more talked about in science research labs. The next is government documents. This is always a heated topic, but it is very important because truth and reconciliation just gets thrown around. That wording, that phrase, that statement often is said constantly at the university, and I found not that many people have ever, one, read the calls to action, or know what the truth and reconciliation is and how it came about. So I often hear that in research labs they'd like to address truth and reconciliation. And if you ask, which call to action would you like to address specifically? They don't always know the answer. And that's okay, because this is all about learning and educating and getting more involved. It's a right to be at any kind of learning level you're at, as long as you're open to improving that. So it's very important to me to talk about the government documents. And truth and reconciliation is a very common one. So if you don't know, truth and reconciliation, it all started with the Indian residential school settlement. So survivors came forward from Indian residential schools, and they created the largest class action lawsuit in Canadian history. That settlement, the largest in Canadian history, is the reason the government developed the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And from that, they worked with Indigenous communities on these different calls to action. And then forward, we move, and there's more mandates and more government documents, and this is why researchers are feeling this pressure to suddenly include these topics. So understanding why this has now come up for researchers and become important in the research environment, it's really important to look at that timeline. And it's very important in the research environment because the educational institutions is where it all began. The generational trauma began in educational institutions, and that's where the work should be done. The next is looking at what responsibility do you have to reconciliation. This is very important because not everyone realizes that each one of you has a responsibility to reconciliation. One of my most favorite quotes is that it can't be the Métis Nation speaking to itself. It takes two parties. So reconciliation involves everyone, and understanding what role you have in reconciliation and what that responsibility is can help inform your decisions on how you include that in your research. And then the next one I like to talk about is, who is this responsibility to? Okay, you have this responsibility, but who are you accountable to? And this is extremely important because there's often broad terms used, the Indigenous communities, these kind of overarching terms. But every community is linguistically, politically, and culturally distinct from each other. And they deserve to be respected in that way as well. And research questions, I know very well, are very specific. They often work in one area or a couple of areas, but they're very specific. And I bet you there's a community whose traditional lands that work is being done on. So who's that responsibility to? Directly naming, engaging, and speaking towards those people, not creating these overarching terms. And then looking at what your intention in incorporating Indigenous Jedi concepts into your research is. Intention is very different than impact. And often, if you talk about intention in the research environment, intention can come in many different forms. Sometimes I've heard that intention is, well, I have to fill out this section of my funding application because I need to do some kind of EDI initiative. And this will look great on that. which is understandable. But this provides an opportunity to talk about community-led intentions and good intentions and other intentions that you can have. And intention comes from your understanding of what's required and what you're responsible for. So talking about that intention can all come back to what your education on why this is happening and why it's important to you specifically. And looking at that impact. So impact is another thing that I like to talk about, that intention versus impact. Because you can provide a certain intention. Say I intend to present, say I'm not Indigenous and I'd like to present an Indigenous Jedi conversation, open up this discussion in my research lab. But I do it in a way that isn't very respectful of the communities that are present. That impact, I could intend for it to be a positive impact, but the true impact could be negative. So looking at what the impacts could be and how to mitigate those impacts and work through these tough decisions and discussions is a really important piece as well. And then looking at what do you gain from this and what do Indigenous communities, your work involves gains from this. So this is the idea of reciprocal research. So it's okay to benefit in certain ways from working with different communities. That's great. Part of research is collaboration, but it needs to be reciprocal. And it needs to be, if any work is done with Indigenous communities, the first thing it needs to be done is community-led, and it has to be upon invitation. An invitation comes in many different forms. People don't always understand that invitation doesn't have to be someone that identifies as Indigenous asking you to come work in their community. There's a lot of invitations that have been put out there. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission is one of them. That's an Indigenous-led document that's been designed and developed to say this is what needs to happen. And this is what we'd like to do. That is an invitation for all of you to do that work. And these kind of things happen at other places too. Like UBC has an Indigenous strategic plan that was developed in consultation with the different communities on campus in the area. And that is an invitation for researchers at UBC to directly work towards those different initiatives. So these are all aspects that inform research, and they are a very important piece on how the biases that occur in research are mitigated. Or, if they're not mitigated, the context in which you provide the research to the public is important to provide. So, that was my talk. Thank you for having me.